Welcome to SDH-HV Bercerita, brought to you by Sekolah Dian Harapan Holland Village. My name is Ibu Santa, and I'm going to read you a story, Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne. And I'm going to read you chapter 5 and 6. Chapter 5, Racing Home. They had no time for explanations. Fogg and his beaming butler raced to catch their next ship for San Francisco. Princess Auda, who had nowhere else to go, came too. She grew fonder of Fogg each day. As the ship streamed on, Passepartout began to think Fogg would win his bet. But one day, he saw Fix on deck. The inspector had secretly followed them. Passepartout hit him. "Wait!" cried Fix. "I might have seemed I was against you before." "You were," said Passepartout. "Well, yes," agreed Fix, "and I still think Fogg's a thief. But now I want him in England. It's only in England I can arrest him." Passepartout didn't want to worry Fogg, so he kept quiet about Fix. But when Fogg went to get his passport stamp in San Francisco, he bumped into the inspector too. "What a surprise!" lied Fix and joined them on the next stage of the journey, crossing America by train. The Pacific Railroad steamed right across the country to New York. It had every luxury on board, from shops to restaurants, but it still had to wait when a herd of buffalo crossed the track. The next obstacle was a shaky bridge. "I'll cross at top speed," said the driver. He went so fast the wheels barely touched the tracks. The train reared up and jumped across. As it landed on the other side, the bridge crashed into the river. Soon after that, they hit a real trouble. The train was steaming by some rocky cliffs when a band of 6 warriors jumped onto its roof. The warriors quickly took over driving the train. Passepartout sped into action. Crawling under the train, he wriggled and swung all the way to the engine without being seen. Then he unhooked the engine and the train slowly came to a halt just beside the station. But when Fogg looked for his butler a few seconds later, he'd gone. The warriors took him when they fled, shouted a guard. Calling over some soldiers, Fogg went into the hills to look for him. It took all day to find and free Passepartout. They had to camp out overnight and only got back to the station the following morning. By then, their train had long since left and the next one wasn't due until that evening. "I've done it again," wailed the butler. But Fix came to the rescue. "I've just met a man who owns a land yacht," he announced. Soon, they were gliding over the snow. Wind filled the yacht's sails and it whizzed over the icy plains. They caught up with the train for New York at the very next station. It puffed across the country at top speed. Fogg still had a chance. They finally stopped at a station by the steamship pier on the bank of the Hudson River in New York. But the ship to England had already left only 45 minutes earlier. No other steamers could take them across the Atlantic Ocean in time. Passepartout was cross, but Fogg just visited every ship in the port. Once again, he found a captain who would take passengers. The ship was sailing to France, but that didn't worry Fogg. He simply locked the captain in his cabin and changed course. The ship was fast, but it was now winter and the weather was terrible. Then the engineer gave Fogg more bad news. "The coal for the boiler is running out," he said grimly. "Even my clever master can solve this," thought Passepartout. Once again, Fogg surprised him. He ordered the sailors to cut down the mast and chop it into logs. Then he told the astonished men to burn the wood in the ship's boiler. Over the next 3 days, the sailors burned the ship's bridge, the cabins, and even the decks. By the time they reached England, only the ship's metal hull was left. They landed in Liverpool with just enough time for Fogg to catch a train to London and win his bet. But as Fogg stepped off the ship, Fix made his move. "Phileas Fogg," the detective announced, "I arrest you for stealing £55,000. Fogg was thrown into prison and there was nothing Princess Auda or Passepartout could do. 3 hours later, they were waiting for news when Fix rushed in. His hair was a mess and he looked ashamed. "I've made a dreadful mistake," he cried. Fogg was free again, but he had only 5.5 hours left. Fogg paid for a special train which roared down to London. As it pulled in, he checked the station clock, 8:55. Fogg had lost his bet by just 10 minutes. Chapter 6. What next? Phileas Fogg did not show any sign of how he felt. He simply left the station with Passepartout and Auda and drove home. The next day, he stayed in his room, adding up all the money he had lost. At 7 o'clock, Fogg visited Princess Auda in her room. "Madam," he said sadly, "when I brought you to England, I planned to give you a fortune. But I am afraid now it is not possible." "My dear sir," the princess replied gently, "I don't want your money, just you." Fogg was overjoyed, and for the first time in his life it showed. "Passepartout," he called, "run to the church and book our wedding for tomorrow." Meanwhile, Fogg's friends at his club had spent the last few days in a fever of excitement. They had not heard a word from Fogg since he left on October 2nd. On the evening of December 21st, they waited eagerly to see if he would show. And as the hands on the clock reached 8:44, they heard a knock on the door. It was Phileas Fogg in person. But how had he done it? Well, Passepartout had returned from the priest with incredible news. "Not Monday, tomorrow," he guessed. Tomorrow's Sunday. Today is Saturday." Going around the world to the east had gained Fogg an extra day. He'd had 10 minutes left to get the club and win his bet. Fogg won £20,000, but as he had spent nearly £19,000 on the way, he wasn't much better off. On the other hand, he did find a wife and happiness on his trip. Most people would go around the world for less. And that is the end of chapter 5 and 6 of The Story Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne. Thank you, everyone!